New evidence exposed about Horner's shocking Red Bull exit, and this changes everything. If you want to finally understand the real reason behind Horner's dismissal, this video is for you. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. Christian Horner's shocking removal from his position at Red Bull Racing didn't merely mark the end of his reign. It ignited a firestorm across the entire Formula One world, a world where he had become a towering presence for nearly 2 decades. The sport had grown so accustomed to his presence, his voice on the pit wall, his sharp statements in press conferences, and his calculated leadership during championship campaigns that the idea of a Red Bull without Horner seemed unthinkable. Yet, in a single swift and merciless move, that illusion was shattered. His exit wasn't accompanied by a farewell speech or a quiet retirement announcement. It wasn't a ceremonious goodbye that recognized the trophies, the victories, or the blood, sweat, and sleepless nights poured into crafting one of the most dominant and efficient teams in motorsport history. Instead, it was an abrupt and clinical dismissal that offered no fanfare, only silence. What unfolded was not some sudden irrational act of boardroom rage, nor was it the result of a single misstep. This was the final chapter of a long-hidden and deeply toxic internal conflict that had been boiling beneath the surface of Red Bull Racing for years. While the outside world marveled at the team's seemingly unstoppable momentum on the track, behind closed doors there were cracks in alliances, in trust, in authority. Slowly but steadily, forces within the organization began shifting, aligning, and scheming. Political maneuvering, hushed meetings, leaked information, whispered betrayals. These weren't just rumors. They were symptoms of a brewing insurrection aimed at the very core of Red Bull's power structure, and Christian Horner, for all his cunning and strategic brilliance, had become the primary target of that uprising. His leadership had once been considered untouchable, his influence beyond challenge. He was the glue that held the team together, the strategist who could read not only the race but the paddock itself, predicting rival moves before they happened, countering with bold decisions, sometimes controversial, but often effective. He wasn't just a team principal, he was the embodiment of Red Bull's racing identity. His battles with rival bosses, his defense of his drivers, and his role in fostering a culture of ruthless excellence made him both respected and resented. But over time, power attracts enemies, and Horner's grip on Red Bull had begun to slip, not due to failure, but due to success breeding internal ambition and resentment. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. At the heart of the organizational turmoil was a transformation in Red Bull's ownership structure, a subtle yet monumental change that altered the very fabric of decision-making within the company. Christian Horner's power had largely been protected by his close relationship with Helmut Marko, the elusive and powerful Thai billionaire, whose family holds the majority stake in Red Bull's global empire. Helmut's 51% ownership gave him, and by extension Horner, dominant voting control, often allowing the team principal to weather internal opposition from the Austrian side of the company and other dissenters within the racing arm. No matter how heated the debates became, or how frustrated figures like Helmut Marko or members of the Verstappen camp grew with Horner's decisions, that majority vote kept him entrenched. But something changed. Slowly at first, then dramatically. Whether it was growing friction between Helmut and Horner over strategic direction, or whether powerful voices inside the organization successfully undermined the relationship, the once solid alliance began to erode. And when that foundational support weakened, Horner's position transformed from invincible to vulnerable. Suddenly, the backstage whispers turned into actionable strategies. His political enemies, once kept at bay, began to encroach. Those who had remained silent out of fear or loyalty saw opportunity. What followed wasn't chaos, it was coordination. A systematic dismantling of Horner's internal network. Key allies were sidelined, communication channels shifted, and the balance of power tilted just enough for the fatal blow to be delivered. When the axe fell, it came without ceremony. No time was offered for final statements or legacy tributes. There was no transition period, no phased handover. Just a stark announcement, a void left in the garage, and a stunned silence that rippled through the paddock. The message was unmistakably ruthless. No one, no matter how decorated or successful, is immune when the tide turns. And in that moment, Red Bull Racing ceased being a unified front and revealed itself as a battlefield of clashing visions, personal ambitions, and fragile loyalties. This sudden shift has triggered a massive recalibration of the team's internal dynamics. Engineers, mechanics, strategists, many of whom were handpicked or mentored by Horner, now operate under a looming cloud of uncertainty. Who's really in charge now? Which faction holds the true authority? The vacuum left by Horner's departure has unleashed a scramble for influence, with figures like Helmut Marko, long known as a power broker in the shadows, potentially stepping into the spotlight. Meanwhile, the Verstappen family, already a major force within the team, may push for greater control, not just over car development or driver strategy, but over long-term direction, personnel decisions, and internal politics. Max Verstappen, a generational talent and a relentless competitor, now finds himself at the center of an unstable environment that could either empower him like never before, or trap him in a web of conflicting agendas. And outside the team, the F1 ecosystem is buzzing with theories, leaks, and speculation. Rivals smell blood. Executives from other teams are reportedly watching closely, hoping to poach talent or exploit the disarray. Fans, journalists, and pundits dissect every word from Red Bull officials, searching for clues about the real reasons behind the abrupt departure. Was there a scandal? A breach of ethics? A clash of egos that spiraled out of control? Or was it simply the inevitable end for a man who had ruled too long, made too many enemies, and found himself isolated at the worst possible moment? Whatever the deeper truth may be, one thing is crystal clear: the Formula One world has been permanently altered. Horner's absence leaves a gaping hole, not just in Red Bull, but in the sport itself. His voice, his presence, his influence in shaping regulations, in pushing rivalries, in navigating the complex political machinery of the FIA and FOM, it's all gone in a blink. The silence is eerie, and the aftermath is just beginning. Red Bull may still have the fastest car. They may still have the reigning world champion. But they no longer have their general. And that changes everything. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. In a move so calculated and quietly executed it escaped immediate global scrutiny, Laurent Mekies, once considered a largely passive yet symbolically powerful figure within Red Bull's ownership structure, altered the entire trajectory of the company without uttering a single word publicly. Without fanfare or explanation, he discreetly funneled his seemingly minor 2% ownership stake into a Geneva-based trust. On paper, it looked like an administrative technicality. In reality, it detonated a power shift of massive proportions. That tiny percentage, while numerically insignificant, had carried with it an entire national influence, the last thread tying tie control to the day-to-day governance of the Red Bull F1 team. By transferring it to a neutral trust, Laurent effectively detached himself from any direct say in the company's operations. In doing so, he handed total operational command to the Austrian arm of Red Bull, which had long been waiting, watching, and strategically aligning itself for precisely such a moment. The Austrians wasted absolutely no time. There were no meetings, no dramatic debates, no leaks to soften the blow. Within mere days of the trust maneuver, Christian Horner, the public face of the team, a man once seen as irreplaceable and deeply entrenched in Red Bull Racing's DNA, was removed. Abruptly. Without ceremony. His access revoked. His presence erased. No interviews. No social media posts. No official goodbyes. Just gone. It was as if he had vanished from the narrative overnight, with no opportunity to defend himself or even acknowledge his exit. It wasn't just a managerial change. It was a surgical extraction carried out with ruthless efficiency, the kind that only comes from months, if not years, of quiet planning. And if you believe Max Verstappen and those within his intimate orbit had no role in this upheaval, you're either willfully blind or deeply naive. While Max himself has never spoken publicly in direct opposition to Horner, and while no definitive evidence links him to the plot, the whispers surrounding his camp have been growing louder for over a year. His father, Jos Verstappen, has become increasingly vocal, openly criticizing Horner's leadership and warning that the internal cohesion of the team was beginning to unravel. His comments, often dismissed as hyperbole or protective parenting, have aged with eerie accuracy. Jos did not mince words. He painted a picture of a team divided, weighed down by mistrust, and slowly losing its edge. And now, in retrospect, it's clear that the Verstappen family wasn't merely observing this storm. They may have been the ones helping stir it from behind the curtain. The shockwaves didn't stop with Horner's removal. Almost immediately, the dominoes began to fall. Adrian Newey, the legendary technical architect of Red Bull's modern era of dominance, announced his departure. The loss of Newey cannot be overstated. He is more than a designer. He is the soul of innovation within the garage, the mind behind countless championship-winning cars. And his decision to walk away did not occur in a vacuum. Meanwhile, whispers began to circulate regarding Pierre Wache, the team's highly respected technical director. Insider chatter suggested he was growing increasingly disenchanted with the internal dynamics, sensing instability and an erosion of the once untouchable culture that had made Red Bull a powerhouse in Formula One. What used to be mere gossip about internal conflict has become an undeniable reality. The organization is in flux, and no one at the top is safe from scrutiny. The official reason given for Horner's dismissal was centered around allegations of inappropriate conduct. These accusations, while serious, were not proven in a court of law, yet they were enough to justify swift and decisive action. Multiple female employees reportedly felt uncomfortable enough to bypass the usual HR protocol, instead taking their grievances directly to the upper echelons of Red Bull's Austrian leadership. That move alone speaks volumes about either the severity of the situation or a calculated maneuver to bring about change. It's still unclear whether the concerns raised were the result of long-standing issues or strategically timed disclosures. In any case, the Austrians seized upon the opportunity with surgical precision. They chose transparency over internal discretion and immediately commissioned an external investigation. Whether this decision was made out of a genuine commitment to justice or as a tactical move to facilitate Horner's removal is still open to debate, but one thing is clear: the complaint, whether organic or orchestrated, became the key to unlocking a power structure long in need of realignment, at least from the Austrian perspective. And now, the landscape has shifted beyond recognition. What began as an internal dispute has transformed into a full-scale political war within the team. Red Bull Racing, once the most united and harmonious operation on the grid, is now fractured. Allegiances are being tested. Loyalties are shifting. And those who were once seen as figureheads of stability are being pushed aside to make way for a new era, an era seemingly dominated by Max Verstappen's growing influence. He may not have signed the paperwork or pulled the strings directly, but his mere presence, his dominance on the track, his father's aggressive public commentary, and the sheer gravitational force of his success, has tilted the balance of power unmistakably in his direction. So while Horner's departure may be explained away by legal language and HR procedures, make no mistake, this was a takeover. A cold, calculated, and ultimately successful restructuring of authority. And as the dust continues to swirl in the wake of this seismic shift, one thing is becoming increasingly undeniable: this is now Max Verstappen's team. Whether he ever asked for it or not, the throne has been placed at his feet. And those around him, both inside and outside the paddock, are watching very closely to see what he does with it. Even Bernie Ecclestone, the legendary figure whose influence shaped the very fabric of modern Formula One, and who for years stood in unwavering support of Christian Horner, found himself caught completely off guard, almost speechless, stunned by the ruthless and abrupt nature of what had just unfolded. For someone like Ecclestone, who has seen the rise and fall of countless team principals, who has witnessed decades of behind-the-scenes power plays and political maneuvering, this particular moment felt different. It wasn't just shocking, it was personal. In a rare moment of open vulnerability and disbelief, he didn't mince words. "It's as if he had committed a murder," Bernie remarked, clearly struggling to comprehend the sheer intensity and brutality of the decision that had just been made. What left him most bewildered wasn't merely the fact that Horner had been dismissed, but rather the manner in which it happened. Sudden, cold, and with a kind of surgical precision that suggested premeditation. He explained that just the day before the dismissal, he had spoken directly with Horner. According to Ecclestone, the conversation had been completely ordinary, absolutely routine, lacking even a hint of anxiety, hesitation, or forewarning. There was no tremble in Horner's voice, no subtle clue that might have indicated he was standing on the edge of a cliff with no safety net. That single detail, seemingly minor, adds an incredible emotional weight to the whole saga. It transforms what could have been dismissed as just another boardroom decision into a deeply human story of loyalty, betrayal, and shocking finality. Here was a man who had devoted more than 20 relentless, unforgiving years of his life to building not just a team, but a dynasty, only to be stripped of it in what many now describe as an almost cruel and heartless fashion. If the controversial allegations and private digital communications linked to Horner's name were, in fact, the underlying cause of this dramatic fallout, it still doesn't answer the most pressing and uncomfortable question: why now? Why, after surviving months of relentless media scrutiny, corporate investigations, and public debate, was he ultimately removed at this specific moment? The infamous WhatsApp saga that erupted at the beginning of 2024 had gradually faded from the headlines. It no longer dominated conversations in the paddock, and many assumed the worst had passed. Horner, through a combination of strategic resilience, media management, and unwavering confidence, had weathered that storm. He hadn't just survived, he had continued to lead with strength. Red Bull's dominance on the racetrack had remained unshaken. The team was still racking up points, clinching podiums, and positioning itself as a formidable force in the championship race. There was no external sign of collapse or decay. And yet, the decision to remove Horner implies that the scandal had merely been dormant, buried temporarily beneath layers of politics and public relations strategy, waiting to be resurrected at the most opportune moment. It's as though the controversy wasn't forgotten. It was kept in reserve, like ammunition waiting for the right battle. When Horner's internal power base weakened, when the allies who once shielded him from danger lost their influence, the moment arrived. And in that brief window, the scandal that once seemed buried was pulled back into the light, sharpened into a weapon, and used with lethal precision. Even now, long after the announcement was made, there's a pervasive sense of disbelief across the paddock, the media, and within the fanbase itself. The consequences are still reverberating like aftershocks following a massive quake. This wasn't just a standard leadership change. It wasn't about restructuring or refreshing the executive branch of a company. It was a full-scale identity crisis triggered at the very core of Red Bull Racing. Christian Horner wasn't simply a name on the organizational chart. He was the architect, the strategist, the motivator, the mastermind who transformed a rebellious, energy drink-backed outfit into a global powerhouse. He was the voice in every major press conference, the face in every victory celebration, the steady hand in every crisis. His fingerprints were on every major decision, from driver selection to technical innovation to sponsorship negotiations. For many within the team and throughout the motorsport community, Red Bull Racing was Christian Horner. Removing him is not just a change, it's a complete reset, a total redefinition of what the team stands for and how it functions going forward. Now in the vacuum left behind, steps Laurent Mekies, a respected, intelligent, and experienced motorsport figure whose career has included key roles at Ferrari and AlphaTauri. He is undoubtedly qualified, calm under pressure, and versed in the complex politics of Formula One. But what he inherits is not a stable institution, it's a fractured organization on the brink of internal combustion. On paper, Red Bull remains a championship-caliber operation with the talent, technology, and resources to win. But behind the scenes, there is turbulence. There are loyalty fractures, communication breakdowns, unanswered questions, and unresolved tensions. Mekies is not stepping into a leadership position. He's walking into a war zone where factions exist, where trust has eroded, and where the ghost of Christian Horner will loom large over every decision he makes. Every strategy call, every media appearance, every word he utters will be measured not against objective standards, but against the legacy of the man who came before him. And that legacy is not a simple one. It's complex, multi-layered, filled with triumph and controversy, but undeniably powerful. Horner didn't just run a team. He created a legacy that redefined modern F1 competitiveness, public image control, and internal management. The Formula One world, as interconnected and rumor-fueled as it is, cannot stop talking about the implications. What will happen to Red Bull's competitive edge now that its core visionary is gone? Will internal power struggles intensify in his absence? Can Mekies unite a divided squad and preserve Red Bull's winning culture? Will key figures within the organization remain loyal, or will they begin seeking exits of their own? The paddock is buzzing with speculation, whispers of hidden agendas, and theories about what really transpired behind closed doors. And amid all that noise, one truth remains: Red Bull Racing has crossed a point of no return. The man who stood at the helm through multiple championship eras, who managed world champions and weathered media firestorms, is no longer there. What comes next is uncharted territory, dangerous, volatile, and for those watching from the outside, absolutely gripping. There is absolutely no question, no room for hesitation or ambiguity, that Christian Horner departs this chapter of his life with an extraordinary financial windfall, the kind of colossal severance that instantly places him among the most lucratively compensated figures in motorsport history. His contract with Red Bull, still robust with more than 5 years remaining at the time of his abrupt exit, contains ironclad terms that now obligate the team to fulfill a staggering payout estimated to soar well beyond the £50 million mark. This is not just a hefty package, it's a monumental, almost surreal financial reward that serves as a golden bridge out of the organization he helped define for nearly 2 decades. It is opulent by any standard, an unignorable testament to the level of influence and value he once commanded within the Red Bull empire. Yet, for all the monetary insulation this provides, it does absolutely nothing to salvage the fragile remnants of his crumbling legacy. Money, no matter how vast in scope, cannot purchase dignity, cannot erase public scrutiny, and certainly cannot restore the tarnished narrative now being written about him across every corner of the Formula One world. His departure wasn't triumphant, it wasn't controlled, it was sudden, unsettling, and completely stripped of the respect or honor typically reserved for someone of his stature. There was no farewell speech, no parting ovation, no carefully choreographed tribute to his accomplishments. Just silence, speculation, and a dark cloud of controversy. The carefully curated legacy he had spent years constructing dissolved in an instant, evaporating under the intense heat of scandal, media frenzy, and internal pressure. What remains is a man once viewed as untouchable, now navigating the fallout of a reputation that hangs precariously by the thinnest of threads. However, despite this shocking downfall, despite the perception that he's been ousted from his kingdom with his name splashed across headlines for all the wrong reasons, Christian Horner is not vanishing into obscurity. Far from it. His name still carries enormous weight within the motorsport community. His expertise, his ruthless efficiency, his unmatched ability to build a winning culture from the ground up, these are not qualities that disappear with a press release or a boardroom decision. In fact, multiple teams are already engaging in preliminary discussions, quiet back-channel conversations, and speculative internal debates about the feasibility and desirability of bringing him into their operations. He is viewed not merely as a free agent but as a transformational figure, someone who could inject discipline, vision, and a championship mindset into any struggling organization. At the forefront of this swirling speculation is Alpine, a team that has struggled to find its identity in a post-Renault era and continues to operate without a clear trajectory. For years, Alpine has been weighed down by internal dysfunction, inconsistent driver lineups, and a technical direction that lacks cohesion. But change is on the horizon. With a new engine partnership with Mercedes looming large in 2026, Alpine is already preparing to rewrite its competitive playbook. Leadership restructuring feels not just logical, it feels essential. And Christian Horner could represent the linchpin in that evolution. His encyclopedic knowledge of team dynamics, his intricate understanding of both short-term race strategy and long-term organizational development, and his relentless pursuit of perfection could be the driving force behind Alpine's long-awaited rise. He knows how to rally a team, how to implement culture shifts, and most importantly, how to navigate the political minefields that come with running a Formula One outfit. At Alpine, Horner would not just be a team boss, he would be a revolutionary force, tasked with reshaping everything from personnel decisions to aerodynamic philosophy. But Alpine is only one potential landing spot. There's another option on the table, one that's far more high-profile, far more politically delicate, and infinitely more pressure-filled: Scuderia Ferrari. The legendary Italian team, steeped in tradition and expectation, has once again found itself grappling with unfulfilled promises and diminishing results. Under the leadership of Frédéric Vasseur, Ferrari has experienced moments of brilliance but no sustained excellence. Bold statements have been made. Optimism has been sold. But the results remain frustratingly inconsistent, and championship contention continues to elude them. Deep within the corridors of Maranello, there is restlessness. Ferrari CEO Benedetto Vigna and Chairman John Elkann are reportedly losing patience, not only with the on-track underperformance but with the lack of strategic cohesion within the team's upper echelons. A dramatic shake-up is no longer unthinkable, it's starting to feel inevitable. And this is where Horner's name enters the fray. The idea of bringing Christian Horner into Ferrari is both tantalizing and controversial. On one hand, he would bring decades of experience, a proven track record, and a no-nonsense management style that could instill the kind of structure and accountability Ferrari has been missing. On the other hand, he would arrive with baggage, both reputational and political, that could create immediate friction within the ultra-traditional and intensely scrutinized Ferrari ecosystem. Yet, if Ferrari truly wants to return to the top of Formula One, if they are willing to break from old habits and take calculated risks, then Horner could be the bold move that triggers a new golden age. His arrival would dominate headlines, ignite fan debate, and electrify the paddock. It would signal that Ferrari is done playing it safe, that they're ready to abandon half measures in favor of audacious decisions aimed at reclaiming the sport's most coveted crown. What lies ahead for Christian Horner remains unpredictable, but what is abundantly clear is this: he is not out of the game. He is still very much a central figure in the sport's ongoing narrative. The fall from Red Bull may have been dramatic, even humiliating, but for someone as fiercely competitive and strategically savvy as Horner, this is merely the beginning of another act. The next move he makes, whether it's in the shadows or under the brightest lights, could once again alter the balance of power in Formula One. And everyone is watching. All across the motorsport world, from die-hard Formula One enthusiasts to casual weekend viewers, the sense of disbelief is palpable. Questions swirl in every corner of the paddock and beyond. Conversations in team hospitality suites, cryptic social media posts from insiders, and hushed whispers in the garage all echo the same themes of confusion, betrayal, and suspicion. Was Christian Horner truly the architect of his own demise? Did years of dominance and power gradually blind him to the undercurrents building beneath his feet? Or did he, perhaps unknowingly, step into a web of strategic deception, laid out with careful precision by figures within his own inner circle? There's an undeniable sense that this isn't merely about individual behavior or personal misconduct. It feels much deeper, much darker, as if something systemic, layered, and carefully orchestrated had been brewing beneath the surface for far longer than anyone on the outside realized. Supporters are left oscillating between disbelief and frustration, trying to make sense of what exactly happened. Was this a carefully timed takedown, perfectly executed to coincide with a moment of vulnerability? Could it be that Horner's confidence in his position had led him to lower his guard just long enough for adversaries, whether internal or external, to make their move? In the high-stakes environment of Formula One, where billions are at play, and reputations are as fragile as the carbon fiber wings on the cars, such strategic power plays are not only possible, they are inevitable. Everyone smiles for the cameras, but behind those smiles lie years of rivalry, tension, resentment, and ambition. The real question that gnaws at fans is not just what Horner did, but who wanted him gone, and why. Was this about cleaning house? A cultural reset? A quiet rebellion from within? Or perhaps a combination of all these forces colliding at once? The truth may never be fully revealed, hidden behind legal walls, corporate confidentiality, and the calculated vagueness of public statements. Yet the consequences are already tangible. Red Bull Racing, once seen as a well-oiled machine with unshakable leadership, now finds itself under a microscope. Every decision, every leadership shuffle, every internal meeting is being scrutinized. There's a newfound tension surrounding the team that no amount of PR spin can truly erase. Even among rival teams, there's a noticeable shift in perception. Some see this as an opportunity, a rare moment of vulnerability in a team that had grown almost too powerful, too untouchable. Others are simply watching, waiting to see whether this marks the beginning of a broader unraveling. For nearly 2 decades, Christian Horner stood at the helm of a dynasty, a fierce figure capable of navigating storms, handling egos, and delivering results. His leadership wasn't just tactical, it was psychological. He knew how to push drivers, how to manage engineers, how to negotiate with sponsors, and how to maneuver in the political chessboard of the FIA and FOM. But the game changed. The world of Formula One, while driven by engines and lap times, is equally a battlefield of alliances, secrets, and long-term agendas. And in that shifting environment, even the most established figures can find themselves isolated, exposed, and ultimately discarded. Horner's story, at least for now, appears to be one of dramatic rise followed by a fall so sudden and public that it's difficult to comprehend. His name, once spoken with admiration, is now wrapped in layers of controversy, speculation, and conflicting narratives. And yet, for all the chaos, his influence cannot be denied. From the early days of Red Bull's entry into the sport, through their first championship glory with Sebastian Vettel, and more recently their dominant resurgence with Max Verstappen, Horner was always there, strategizing, motivating, executing. He wasn't just a team principal, he became an institution within the paddock. His image was iconic, his presence constant, his approach at times divisive, but always effective. The structure he helped build, the culture he enforced, the legacy he shaped, it will all endure in some form, even if his name is no longer on the garage wall. Still, legacy is a complicated thing in a sport that never stops moving. One moment, you're celebrating on the podium with champagne and trophies. The next, you're being dissected by media, colleagues, and fans alike. Horner's exit, if this truly is the end, has become a spectacle in itself, a cautionary tale about the volatility of leadership in a world that demands both perfection and pliability. Where once he was the master of Red Bull's fate, now he is the center of an unfolding drama that has redefined how leadership is viewed within the team and possibly across the entire F1 landscape. And so the fans remain hooked, not just by the headlines, but by the intricate human story playing out in the shadows of the sport's fastest cars. They crave answers, but also drama, emotion, closure. Each rumor fuels more theories. Each anonymous quote adds another layer of intrigue. What was once seen as an unbreakable institution has now shown its cracks, and those cracks have only deepened the fascination. Whether Horner stages a return, reinvents himself elsewhere, or quietly disappears from the spotlight, his story has become one of the most compelling narratives in recent F1 history. And in a sport defined by speed, risk, and the pursuit of glory, it serves as an unforgettable reminder that even the most powerful can fall, sometimes not because they failed to win, but because they won for too long. Tell us, without holding anything back, what do you truly believe triggered the dramatic implosion of everything we thought we understood about Red Bull's internal dynamics? Was Christian Horner the manipulative architect of his own demise, subtly pulling the strings from behind the curtain until the very foundation beneath him crumbled? Or was he simply another disposable figure in an intricate and high-stakes game of power, legacy, and loyalty, where billion-dollar interests collide and reputations are sacrificed like chess pieces on a board too large for most to even comprehend? Could Horner have been fighting battles we were never meant to see, facing silent opposition from within the very core of the organization he helped build? Perhaps whispers of betrayal, internal sabotage, or even long-held grudges were waiting in the wings, and this collapse wasn't accidental. It was planned, executed with precision by those who stood to gain the most. Was this part of a bigger plan, a corporate reshuffle designed to realign allegiances, shift leadership influence, and open the door to a new era within Red Bull, one that required a powerful figure to fall in order for others to rise? We're opening this up to you. Let your voice be heard. Your opinion is not just welcome, it's crucial. The world is watching, and this community thrives on bold perspectives. Do you think this downfall was orchestrated from the shadows by higher powers seeking to protect their own interests? Or was Horner simply too confident, too deeply embedded in his own sense of control, to see the ambush coming? Share your theory, no matter how wild, controversial, or unexpected. Were legal threats and corporate politics involved? Did alliances shift behind the scenes, leaving Horner isolated when he needed allies the most? Could this be the first public sign of a deeper fracture within the Red Bull empire, one that could ripple across the entire paddock and unsettle everything from team dynamics to driver contracts? Go ahead, dive into the comments and make your voice part of this moment. This isn't just about speculation, it's about uncovering the hidden forces, the unspoken truths, the uncomfortable questions no one wants to ask out loud. Your take might unlock an angle no one has considered yet, or it might spark the exact kind of conversation that leads to a whole new understanding of what really happened behind the scenes. And if you're as fascinated as we are by the fallout, the uncertainty, and the possibilities that now hang in the balance, don't wait a second longer. The next video is already live, packed with exclusive breakdowns, unexpected twists, and detailed coverage of what this all means for the future of Red Bull, its leadership structure, and the political undercurrent that could shape Formula One's next era. Click now, dive in, and don't blink, because what's coming next might just change everything you thought you knew.